Dion, great. So great to be here, and always happy to share stories about Steve Yegi with a former someone that he's also impacted as well. So that has been, I
Absolutely.
trust he was as interesting back then as he is today.
He's always been a character, I think. I think that hasn't changed, that's for sure. That's awesome. Well, Gene, I'm really excited to kind of sit back and see what you've got to share with us, and then I'll be back at the end to chat a little bit more. But let's take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes. So I've had the privilege of studying high performing technology organizations since 1999. And that was a journey that started back when I was the CTO and founder of a company called Tripwire in the information security space. And so our goal in studying these high performers, it was those organizations that had the best project due date performance and development, the best operational reliability and stability in ops, as well as the best posture of security and compliance. And so we want to understand, how did those amazing organizations make their good to great transformation, so we could understand how other organizations could replicate those amazing outcomes. And so, as you can imagine, in a 26-year journey, there were many surprises. But by far, the biggest surprise was how it took me into the middle of the DevOps movement, which was still remains so urgent and important. I think the last time that we've seen any industry disrupted to the extent that all our industries are being disrupted today was likely in manufacturing in the 1980s, when the U.S. auto industry was upended with the entrance of Toyota into the automotive marketplace. And so I got to work on the DevOps handbook with Patrick Dubois. Worked on something called the State of DevOps Research with Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble. And more recently, I got to hang out with Steve Yegi, who I met last June. And I cannot tell you what a fun adventure that has been. So what I'd like to do in the next 25 minutes is share with you what I've been up to lately, what Steve and I have been working on together, and share what vibe coding has to do with DevOps and the Dora anomaly, and really describe what vibe coding has done for me. I had mentioned earlier, I've never had as much fun as I'm having today because of what AI assisted coding can enable. And so I've written a bunch of books, including the DevOps Handbook, which I mentioned before, the Phoenix Project, the Accelerate book, as well as Wiring the Winning Organization. And so we had mentioned Steve Yegi, and so many of you may know him through his one of the most best depictions of the great Amazon API re-architecture in the early 2000s, where they went from being able to do hundreds of deployments per day in the late 90s, grinding to a halt where they could only do tens of deployments per year. Most deployments didn't even finish to later they were able to do hundreds of thousands of deployments per day by 2011. And so one of the best depictions of this was this famous memo that Steve Yegi described, saying how all teams must henceforth communicate only through APIs, that they can only communicate through these processes. No other form of inter-process communications would be allowed, and anyone who doesn't do this would be fired. And of course, in the Yegi style, he said number 7 is obviously a joke, because Yegi doesn't actually care whether you have a great day or a bad day. And so that famous memo actually landed him on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, because that was actually meant to be posted privately on Google Plus, and he accidentally set it to public, and resulting in a 2 a.m. call with the Google PR managers. Anyway, so I met him in 2024 because of the work that he was doing in what he was calling chat-oriented programming. And as a result of our conversation, he wrote this article called "The Death of the Junior Developer," which was so utterly interesting and really described kind of what is happening to the workforce, what could be potentially happening. He later presented at the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit. This is a conference I've been running for the last 11 years, describing how coding is changing out from underneath us and how organizations need to get ready. And one of the things that we found that we had in common was this belief that the days of writing code by hand are coming to an end. And so some of you saw the talk earlier from Dick about he was the MVP champion, and this is Dr. Eric Meyer. So he was in charge of C#. Before that, he was part of Visual Basic. He wrote the hack language at Facebook, Meta. And he gave us this amazing talk sometime last year, who described how time is the most important thing that we have as humans. It can be neither stored nor created. And so if we can find ways to save time, we have to take it. And he said that for so long we thought as developers that we would be safe from automation, but in any sort of analysis, we're finding that code generation is actually one of the things that AI is best at. And if we are the last generation of developers to write code by hand, let's have fun doing it. So both Steve and I loved this talk, and Steve, more than anyone I know, has really adopted vibe coding into his daily work. He's now writing 12,000 lines of high quality code for production that's well tested. He's spending $300 to $500 a day on 3 to 5 instances of Claude Code or SourceGraph AMP. That's how he's racking up these sort of numbers. And what's astonishing here is that all of the practices that he's using, right, all of us can use in our own daily work to have more fun, build, be more ambitious about what we can build, do things faster, and explore a much larger option space. And so, what is our definition of vibe coding? It's really anything besides typing in code by hand. So that's a very expansive definition. So vibe coding obviously was coined by Dr. Andre Karpathy, not so long ago in December. And already they're talking about at Google, actually, instead of fixing code, just pulling the slot machine lever like we saw earlier today, right? And just generating a new solution. When the cost of creation drops, it brings into possibilities, ways of solving problems that just simply did not exist before. The Cloud Code team, they were recently, Boris and Catherine Wu, they were on the Latent Space podcast, and they described how 80% of all code for Cloud Code was actually written by Cloud Code. And they're citing within Anthropic, somewhere between a 2 to 10x increase in productivity, or at least compression in terms of how much time is required to do things using Cloud Code versus writing it by hand. So here's the value that we put into the book that we're working on. We call it FAFO, faster. We can build the things that we want faster. We can be more ambitious about the things that we can build. 3 is we can do them alone. In other words, we don't have to rely on a team, or worse yet, a team of teams, right? We reduce the cost of coordination, as well as this other cost of it's very difficult to read other people's minds, even with AI. So if you can do things alone, right, that creates a whole bunch of independence of action that didn't exist before. We can also have so much more fun doing it. We know that from decades of benchmarking is that when we are more productive and we have more fun, that is a magical combination. And then one of the things that I will try to convince you in this session is that the highest value of all is to be able to explore more options, to have more swings at bat, to explore more of the design space, because we can do things so quickly and easily. So just as a personal example, in the last 6 months, I did my first large-scale statistical analysis in Python. So for the last 20 plus years, I've used primarily SPSS, which is one of the best that 1970s technology could give us. And I did it in Google Colab. I did it in Python, a language that I've only spent maybe 100 hours in my whole career using. And it was the first time again that I did things where I have just decades of muscle memory doing SPSS. That was magical. I resurrected a new data pipeline from Twitter, which Twitter broke in 2023. But in support of the book, I was able to get that up and running through if this, then that. And I can't help but notice that anyone who figures this out and posts a repo who talks about it has a repo taken down. So if you have any advice on how one can actually talk about that without some sort of takedown notice, I would love to learn. And I fixed bugs and tools that I haven't touched in 2 years that have been bothering me. All possible because of primarily Cloud Code, coding agents like GitHub Copilot, like SourceGraph Coding, and so forth, and Augment Code. So I also wrote 3 iterations of a writer's workbench. Actually, I haven't mentioned it, right? So Steve and I were working on this book called Vibe Coding. It's coming out in fall. In summer and fall. And there were 3 iterations of it. The first one was just a JavaScript app to reduce the amount of copy and pasting required to sling these, copy paste prompts and data from one tool to another. I wrote the second generation was a Google Docs add-on, which I've never written before. I wrote that in 3 hours inside of Google Apps Script. And that was great. Both Steve and I used it, but it was so slow. It would take somewhere between 15 to 30 seconds to open up files, to copy things to clipboards. And so I wrote a third iteration in a terminal application, sort of like Cloud Code. And that has been amazing. And so really the net effect, like so many of you developers, is that, there are nights where I can't sleep because of all the things that I want to build. I'm having to force myself to put down the keyboard and go to sleep so, I can have a healthy life. But it's so full of danger, as you know, right? AI generated code can quickly become non-modular. They can create these eldritch horrors, these incomprehensible code bases that are impossible to understand, let alone change. You can create simple changes where AI builds upon its own unreviewed code, creating tightly coupled systems, no matter how many guidelines you give it. And then, we know that teams working in complex, tightly coupled architectures, the literature has said is that teams working in bad, tightly coupled code bases are 9 times more likely to be fired or quit, right? Those same things can happen when we're working in AI generated systems, which can turn nicely modular code quickly into a big ball of mud. And we know that if you don't have fast feedback loops, we know that fast feedback loops are important to get feedback on our work and development. But with AI coding, with vibe coding, we need even faster feedback loops, right? That because as the time to generate code goes down, our feedback loops have to be ever much more tighter, and we need that happening in our most inner development loops, right? Measured in seconds, not minutes. And so I had mentioned this vibe coding book. This is coming out in the fall or summer or fall. And again, I have learned so much working with Steve on this book. And again, I've never had so much fun as right now. So I mentioned this writer's workbench that we wrote to help with the draft generation and critiquing process. What's remarkable is that we burned 70 million tokens in 30 days. That's 3,000 LLM hours. And this was just amazing. When I was writing the preface for the book for my section, I was stunned to find out that the first line of code was written only 30 days ago. So what happened in 30 life moves fast in the AI world. We found that even in those 30 days, we went through the whole life cycle of software where it was exhilarating and working. It turned into a haunted code base that was impossible to change. And I was able to resurrect it, to support this production need of getting the book out. But again, there is a very incredible orthogonal relationship between, say, vibe coding and vibe writing. It essentially turns it is like a slot machine, right? As we saw in the vibe coding demo, right? Is that you have such high upsides, but also infinite downsides. In the slot machine, you can only lose the amount of money that you put in. When it comes to vibe coding, the slot machine can actually reach into your pockets, into your bank accounts, right? And destroy your code base, which actually almost did happen to Steve before. So there are so many interesting problems that still need to be solved, right? How do you gain assurance of code functionality when it's no longer you typing out by hand, and maybe even in languages that you don't know very well? What do you do when all the jobs we had when we started our careers are going away? This is actually what someone who is head of dev platforms at a Foundation AI lab said, right? How do we get our own organizations ready for this incredible new technology? And for that matter, how do we measure the value that GenAI creates for developers? So let's move into the second portion of the talk, which is about how we measure value. And so this is one of the things I'm most professionally proud of in my career is working on the state of DevOps research. I started this with Jez Humble in 2012, and Dr. Nicole Forsgren joined the team in 2013. And so this is a cross-population study that spanned over 60,000 respondents over 6 years. And so the cross-population instrument is the same technique that they used in the health profession, right, to establish the link between smoking and early morbidity and mortality. So we use the same instrument to try to find out what do high performers look like and what are the things that correlate or even predict performance. And what we found for 6 years in a row is that high performers exist and they massively outperform the non-high performing peers. And so, we know that high performers deploy multiple times a day. So that's 2 orders of magnitude faster than their peers. But more importantly, they can deploy in 1 hour or less. In other words, how quickly can we go from code committed into version control, into integration, through testing, through deployment, so customers saying thank you. Again, that's 2 orders of magnitude faster than the peers. What's remarkable is they're getting far better outcomes. When they do a deployment, they're 7 times more likely to succeed without causing a 7 outage, a service impairment, a security breach, or a compliance failure. And when something bad does happen, which Murphy's Law guarantees, they are able to fix things in 1 hour or less. That's 3 orders of magnitude faster than the peers. And so what we know now from 6+ years of research is that the only way that you can get these small, these amazing reliability profiles is to do smaller deployments more frequently. And so we know that over the years, these high performers, because they're integrating information security objectives into everyone's daily work, they are spending only 1/2 the amount of time remediating security issues. And in addition to these great technology measures, they are twice as likely to exceed profitability, market share, and productivity goals, or twice as likely to achieve organizational and mission goals, regardless of how they choose to define it. And so it just shows that, when technology, when mission achievement requires work that we do in the technology value stream, DevOps helps with the achievement of those goals. So what we know from the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit, the DevOps Enterprise Summit, is that this is not just for the big tech companies. This is across every industry vertical, across whether it's profit or not profit. And we know this is true in pharmaceuticals. So this is from Pfizer, describing how they're elevating the productivity of thousands of developers across all the parts of Pfizer, whether it's research and development, pharmaceutical development, sales and marketing. Vanguard is an organization that has $9.5 trillion of assets under management, 10,000 plus developers. And Siemens, they give us an amazing experience report showing that how they're applying the same techniques for computed tomography inside for the fleet of thousands of CT scanners inside of hospitals. And by doing that, they were able to reduce the time to get software into the certification process. They could do it every day versus spending up to 6 months to get software ready for certification. So always being certification ready. So are we there yet with vibe coding? No. In fact, one of the case studies we put in the vibe coding book was a friend of ours, Luke Burton, who was at Apple and now NVIDIA, describing how he had written firmware uploading software for his CNC machines. So those are the metal grinding machines. And had he not been paying attention, it would have actually required a factory reset of a machine that's hundreds of pounds, requiring access to the factory panel. So just showing how so much vigilance is required. And so, just to show how potentially dangerous AI is, there was something that really peculiar that showed up in the DORA report. So this is the DevOps Research and Assessment Organization. That was the State of DevOps Research was acquired by Google Cloud. And they found this astonishing finding that said the more AI you use, the worse throughput got and the worse stability got. And when I read these findings, I was just astonishing, right? In fact, I got in contact with them, and and the reason is that it just does not square with my own experience, where I feel like I am 10, 20, 30 times more productive with AI assist than without, right? What could explain, this anomaly? And scientific anomalies are often the source of the most significant breakthroughs, including Mercury's orbit revealing the true nature of gravity, the eclipse in 1919, validating Einstein's discoveries. So our goal is to, we're assembling a dream team of researchers where our goal is to see if we can explain the anomaly, right, and actually be able to tease out what value, we can actually get from GenAI. So here's 2 hints. This is Fernando Cornago. He is Global SVP of Digital Tech at Adidas, and he described a 700-person pilot that they used internally. And one of the great piece of evidence that he was able to show was that it requires loosely coupled architectures, requires fast feedback loops. And when you do this, you can get a 50% increase in happy time. So this is time that developers, they appreciate. They're working on things that advance their craft, that help advance the mission goals. right? Unhappy or annoying time, right, is dealing with brittle tests or dealing with environment issues or dealing with impossible to understand test failures. And so he's describing that they're finding like a 30% reduction in pull request times. And so we know there's something there, right? And that architecture and fast feedback loops are a discriminant. Bruno Passos. This is Bruno Passos. He is head of dev platforms at Booking.com. They have 3,000 developers. And one of the things that they found in their year-long plus pilot is that they're observing 30% reductions of merge request times, just like Adidas, and also 70% reduction in diff sizes. And so we know that the smaller diffs, the faster we can improve them for whatever reasons, right? Developers being disciplined about using vibe coding techniques. They're also putting in merge requests that are smaller and easier to prove. So more research needed there. And this is really what we're hoping to tease out in this study of GenAI and developers. So let me share with you what excites me so much about vibe coding, which is what we're calling FAFO. Be able to do things faster, be more ambitious of what we can build, be able to do things alone, have more fun doing it, and have more swings at bat. So what's interesting to me is that clearly I can do things faster. In fact, I was able to, in my first pair programming session with Steve Yegi, I was able to write a program that took these excerpts I generated from screenshots of YouTube videos and turned them into video excerpts I could post on YouTube, which is actually how I first met Dr. Eric Meyer. My first interaction with him was commenting on his video. I did that in 42 minutes. And so my reflections on that is that, one, it was faster, but two, it enabled me to do things that were more ambitious. In other words, that video excerpt creator was something that I've always thought about. I had wanted to build something like that for years, but I always slotted that as a next month activity. And maybe it was because the perceived benefit wasn't high enough, or maybe the difficulty made the juice not worth the squeeze, or maybe there was some other opportunity with a higher, more immediate payoff that I chose to do that instead of writing the video excerpt creator. So these are all economic decisions about how I chose to spend my time. That's actually not how my brain works, but economics gives us a great way of talking about how why we do things one thing versus another. And so the fact that I could be more ambitious about what I could build and do it in less than an hour, not days or weeks, just opens up worlds of possibilities in terms of what we can do. In fact, the Cloud Code team described that one of the things they've noticed is that a lot of pull requests, they never make it to the backlog. They're just done in that hour, just because it's easier to just do it then than it is to deal with all the bookkeeping, and putting the backlog where it may never, ever get done. So allows the combination of ambitious and faster is very, very powerful. The third dimension is to be able to do things yourself. So Steve told me the story last year that I found very impactful. He was talking to his then head of AI, who showed him a multi-class prediction model that he had trained and deployed in a single day with the help of a coding assistant. What's really remarkable about that story is that had that happened the year prior in 2023, that would have been a 6-week university senior level intern project. So it was great for the head of AI to be able to do it himself. Maybe not so great for that junior developer who lost an opportunity to do something amazing, but it just shows how doing things alone allows us to reduce the cost of two very important taxes. One is coordination cost, right? Every time you have to work with another person or another team, you have to deal with synchronization, coordination, prioritization, reporting, all these things. And that's not free. The second one is that whenever you're working with someone else, you just can't read someone else's mind, right? And so being able to lower that cost of not avoid that altogether by doing things yourself, right, has tremendous value. 4, we can have more fun doing the work. Without a doubt, my personal experience is that using vibe coding techniques, I'm having so much fun. So it's a very addictive thing, vibe coding, right? Is that you have intermittent rewards like a slot machine, right? And that's actually the most addictive pattern that causes addictive behaviors. And so I think this is why so many people are saying, I'm up till 2 a.m., right? Because it's just so fun. And the last thing I want to share with you is explore more options. And I want to share with you, so this means having more swings at bat, research more alternatives, prototype more ideas, analyze more risks, to avoid going through one-way doors that you can't get back through if you choose the wrong door. And so this is all what happens when we can lower the cost of experiments. And this makes it easier to expand the frontier of what you can build. And so there are three key ideas in economics. One is the time value of money, meaning $1 now is more than $1 tomorrow. Two is portfolio diversification, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And the third is option theory. The more uncertainty you have, the more valuable it becomes to defer a decision. In other words, defer the decision until you have more data. And so when things are as uncertain as now, you don't want to get into long-term commitments. You don't want to get into a 3-year outsourcing contract, right? Because everything can change next month or even tomorrow. And so Steve Yagi is the person on the lower right. Dr. Steve Spear is on the upper left, and the person who is a pioneer in modularity and option value and modularity is Dr. Carlos Baldwin. And we got a masterclass in understanding how to identify option value, how to measure it. And it comes down to this incredible formula called NK divided by T and sigma. And so we all know the value of modularity, and I feel like option value tells us why. N is the number of modules that can be worked on independently. K is the number of parallel experiments that can be run on each module. T is the time required to actually perform an experiment. And sigma describes the risk-reward uncertainty. And so when sigma is 1, basically you know everything ahead of time, right? You don't need option values, you don't need experiments, right? Because you always know what the right answer is. When sigma is infinite, like right now, right, option value is very, very high. And so we want the most number of modules that we're going to work on independently. We want to perform the most number of experiments, and we want to spend the least amount of time performing experiments. And so this is a scalar value that if we can increase modularity, increase the number of experiments, decrease the amount of time required, right? This creates exponential value in terms of the option space that you can explore. So think of the slot machine, right? You want to find the slot machine that's paying out the highest, right? And you want to defer your decision until you know which slot machine is paying out the highest. So, yes, the time has never been better to be a developer. So let me leave you with this. I am so eager to find out how leaders are using this amazing new technology to help their organizations win. Bruno Passos from Booking.com, he'll be presenting at the conference I'm running in September in Las Vegas. So will Fernando Cornago, the SVP of Digital at Adidas. We're hoping to get some of the other amazing case studies of how people are really driving the frontier of performance. And so if you are interested in that, please join us in September. The help I'm looking for is anyone who can share experience reports about how they are using AI to generate amazing solutions and help your organizations win. Please contact me. If you're interested in anything I've written, including excerpts from the Vibe Coding book, just send an email to realgenekim@sendyourslides.com. Subject line, let's do DevOps. I think I'm not sure if the GenAI one took. Just send me that email and you will get an automated response in a matter of minutes. So I thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Gene. That was really fun. It seems like you got across the fun that you're having in this new world.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. Like I said, I've never learned as much as I have right now, and I've never been having much fun in terms of like not just coding, but all the research around like what does it take to create the conditions so that people can actually get value out of this new amazing technology.
Yeah, totally. It resonated a lot. I feel like I can dive into areas that I've not, like you were talking about getting into Python. I've had the same thing. The whole T-shaped developer, right? Yeah. Like it's totally changed what we're able to go into and just have confidence in going into, which is really fun. I was talking to a developer who, their company has a mono repo where before it'd be like, here's the Rust developers and they live within this part of the source code. Right? And then now they're diving into each other's code, and they still need the expertise, right? They're still getting reviews from the people that really understand it. And so you get into this kind of virtuous learning loop, which is really fun.
No, it is absolutely. What a time to be alive.
Right, totally. Okay, I want to pull up a question here. We often talk about the time of like writing the code, so to speak. But Patrick was curious how much time you spent reviewing compared to, the actual code generation.
Oh my gosh! Oh, what a great question, Patrick. So yeah, so for Yegi to post these numbers like 12,000 lines of code committed, he's reviewing 100,000 lines of code, and in fact, he's obviously not generating any of the code, so all his time is spent reviewing. And so this is for a multi-million line code base called Wyvern. It's this game that he wrote 35 years ago, and it's something he knows intimately. And so often when we were in our book writing sessions, right, I mean, he's watching, the output of, three, back then it was only 3 coding agents, but it just shows that, I think the what we need to get good at is review. I had mentioned, burning 70 million tokens while writing the book. And to write 3 paragraphs, Patrick, when we worked together on the DevOps handbook, so much of it was interview, and then one of us would take the lead at generating the first draft, right? To be able to put in a transcript and say target, 3 to 5 paragraphs, right? And go from 1 model to 10 models to 50 models simultaneously. You're expanding the option space, right? You're actually increasing K and decreasing T, right? Which actually allows you to find that lightning in a bottle. So we would review 30 to 50 pages, right? To cobble together 3 to 5 paragraphs. So it just shows how time goes from generation into reviewing and selection. And I think it just shows the thing that becomes most important is like judgment and taste and knowing what you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're talking about the workbench, and you're adding all of this code really, really quickly. How do you find the process kind of scaling over time? And you mentioned just then that Steve Yegi with Wyvern, like he has the whole code base in his head, so he can be the reviewer and the like. Like, how are you finding things as it's scaling, and the individual human maybe doesn't have the entire code base within their head even quicker with?
It went great until it didn't. Right? I remember there was one point in time where I needed to parallelize the ranking function, right? I was trying to decrease T. And I looked inside the code, and it was this 3,500 line function, right? Where I didn't even understand how the output files were being generated. I didn't understand the function signature. I spent 20 minutes trying to understand it, and then forgot it because it was just so incomprehensible to me. It took me 2.5 days during a writing deadline to actually, Steve had to, he had a medical emergency. And so I used that time to actually fix the code. Because, so that's what it took to resurrect the code base into something that could change again. And so it just shows that for any given solution, there are infinite ways to solve it, and AI will find the most alien ways to solve it if you're not careful. And so I think I thought I learned my lesson, and I actually tried to build something like a Java Swing UI, and I just found that the AI would just find any way to put pixels on that screen. I'm like, no, you're only used to allow these 4 functions to get things onto the screen. And it just takes that level of vigilance. Otherwise, you have a lot of cleanup to do. And when you're relying on the functionality, it's a nightmare to try to recreate it. Anyway, so I think any developer will resonate with that story.
Totally. No, that makes so much sense. And then you had on one of your slides talking about, test-driven development. What was that process like? Because we were chatting earlier with someone about kind of the chicken and the egg of, developers really don't like writing tests. So can the AI write the tests? And, there's all these tests. So can the AI take the tests and write the code?
Yeah, I think, right? I mean, what is it? Like all tests are specifications, but not all specifications are tests. And in my opinion, I think it's crazy, absolutely crazy, not to write the test first. Because at that point you not only have a specification, but you have something that is testable. Right, because it concretizes your interface. You're testing the outputs of that interface, right? And you're forcing the AI to stay in that box. I mean, that solves so many problems in my experience, right? That goes so far in terms of like preventing you wake up and you see a room full of AI generated horrors.
Yeah, no, totally. And you're talking about how with the swing example, for how it found alien ways just to put pixels on the screen.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time with tests too, where if you don't write really good tests, it'll find lots of ways to kind of get around to make that test pass.
Oh yeah, including
including the
disabling
most
them.
wonderful ones of deleting code and putting paths in there and the like.
Yeah, in fact, there's one learning that we put in the book, which is like there's something that you have to be so vigilant about is the fact that AIs are bad at instruction following, right? That's well known. But the fact that you know, essentially AI is really good at hijacking the reward function. And so when you say like make these 10 tests pass, right, it might do a great job on the first 6 or 7, but as it's running out of output context, right, it will often say, all right, I made all the tests pass, but just disabled the last 3, or because it wants to be helpful. So those are things that I think all these things suggest we really want to work on small tasks. There was a great line from one of the other sessions that said, target your output generations to be about 100 lines of code long. I don't know if that's the right number, but yeah, it's probably close to 100 than 1,000, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
another reason to sort of shrink the ambition of the tasks.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, got another question here for you. So, what strategies have you found work for avoiding cascading design problems? And what are some SDLC formats with vibe coding that you have found effective?
Yeah, I think like one of the things that we know from the state of DevOps research is that architecture is one of the top predictors of performance. Meaning that my recent understanding of this is that it really is about having independence of action. You want pieces that can work independently of each other at the same time without any ability to interfere with each other. And I would say most of the vibe coding disasters that I've had are where you'd have 2 pieces that were once separate somehow get stuck together again, right? And I think anything where you can sort of signal to the AI, right, whether it's in the Claude MD file in something, right, it's like work only on the files that I give you, right? Don't backdoor yourself into another module. That's I think that's how you prevent the cascading part of design problem. And I think the other thing, it sounds so obvious, but every project, every endeavor, you can decompose into a task tree or a task graph. Just thinking through what that is, right, and decomposing it, and then sort of starting at the leaf nodes, right? That's where I still catch myself making errors where I do that, generate a plan, and then I have it do too much when I really I should just be sticking to the leaf nodes because it's easier to verify, it's easier to validate as you go, and it's easier to spot when it's coloring outside the lines.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much, Gene. That was great information. Look forward to reading the new book. And thank you again for taking the time to join us today.
Very good. Well, if you're interested in free excerpts, just send an email to that sendyourslides.com, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.